Hi, everyone, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 8 of the HONESTea. My name is Angela Malakai, and the whole purpose of this podcast initially, and still is my purpose, is that I believe that we all have a gift that needs to be fulfilled. And we have a personal legend, a hero's journey, and part of my personal legend is that I love to share and teach and grow people through the use of my voice. And so hence the podcast, The HONESTea. I will show up as authentically as I can for you, and the hope that it will inspire you to follow your own personal legend. And this season is all about we're spilling the honest tea on prosperity. And this is episode 8. And what I would love to talk to you about is mirror neurons. So it's really interesting because I hear a lot of people say, when somebody turns up in some kind of way, they'll say, oh, mirror, all that kind of thing. And I kind of wonder, do you even know where that comes from? So just to give you some insight, in case you haven't heard about it before, back in the 90s, there was an experiment that actually started with some monkeys who were eating bananas, and the scientists figured out what part of their brain fired when that happened, and then discovered that when they actually were watching somebody eating a banana, that those same neurons lit up. And so what does that tell us? So if obviously they ended up figuring it out that was happening with humans as well. And those are our mirror neurons and our brain cells that wire and fire, not just when we're doing something, but when we're watching somebody doing something. So if you think about it like, when you see someone yawn and then you want to yawn, or you're watching TV and somebody like falls, or you might even be watching a video on your phone, somebody falls and hurts themselves and you kind of flinch, or or even the opposite case, where there are some people who just have this beautiful calming energy, and whenever you're around them, they make you feel safe and you feel like, oh, I can relax. And so your brain is constantly in the state of what's happening here. And there's a couple of reasons why it matters. So first of all, we know that or if maybe you haven't heard this before, that your environment is so essential when it comes to creating the life that you want. So if you're hanging around people that are not achieving what you want to achieve, you're less likely to achieve those things. So your environment, in terms of the people, and your environment means, everything in your environment, even what you're watching, what you're consuming in terms of the books you read, the things you watch on TV, whether you are you on YouTube, watching people fail, or are you on YouTube watching because you want to grow? And it's what you put into your body, and what all of those things, and then the people that you're around. I think not sure who, can't remember who said it now, that you are most like the 5 people that you are closest to, and that is partly because of this whole mirror neuron thing that's going on. And so we are mimicking, whether we realize it or not, the people that we're around. So if you want success, you need to be around success. I mean, that's the reason why, when I wanted to start my healing journey, I got around people who were healed, and people who could coach me to get to a place where I could be more healed. And then, when I wanted to do well in business, then I would get, a business coach. And when I wanted to do well in, whatever it is, when I wanted to do better as a speaker, then I got a coach who would speak who would help me to around my speaking. So all of those things, wherever you're going in life, it really matters who you surround yourself with, not just your coach, but also the people who are in your vicinity. And I know we can't choose your, your family and that, but you can set boundaries around it, so, and it's really important that, because one of the things that I used to hear a lot in my practice, and I still hear it a lot, is, oh, I had this really great idea and I really wanted to do it and I really love whatever it is. But I spoke to my family about it and they just think it's a really bad idea. And, they convinced me not to do it. And I would say, oh, okay, so they're business owners? No. So they're entrepreneurs? No. So they've had success in their own lives in this particular area? No. So why are we taking advice from people who haven't, that are not in the arena, as Brene Brown would say, who are not even doing the thing that we want to do? Even I hear it around relationships. So many people take relationship advice from people who are single. How many people are hanging around all of these other people who, because this is what we like, right? This is we like to feel belonging. So a lot of times we will get around, but that's part of affinity bias too, is that we'll get around people who are most like us. And so we get around people, for example, who are all single and not in happy relationships. And then we take relationship advice off those people. Like, just spilling the honest tea here, giving you a bit of a reality check. Take advice from people who are doing what you want to be doing. You want to get advice from the people who have the fulfilled, happy, joyous relationship, who have longevity. Those are the people that you get advice from, right? You don't get advice from people who are not even playing the game, who are not even there. And we all have things at different times that we're better at. And so whatever it is you're focusing on, wherever your energy is, whatever it is that you want to get around those people, because you are firing the same cells, the same brain cells are firing when you are doing it yourself. So say, for example, you want to be successful in business, or when you are watching somebody doing it, or when you are around people. So if you surround yourself with people who have success, then you will have success. If you surround yourself with people who don't have success and who are living in scarcity, who are telling the story of how life is hard and how life is difficult and how it's really hard to get ahead, then you're more likely to believe those things for yourself also. And that's just a fact. That's just what happens. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important for you to ensure that you are creating an environment that will influence your state, your energy. And I don't know if you've ever heard that, I think Maya Angelou might have said it. People don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And that's part of that whole, the whole affinity or, congruence that we feel with other people who are most like us. And we kind of, we understand that it's how people make us feel when we interact with them that matters most. That's why sometimes you will have a really great intention. You go into a space with this really good intention and people misunderstand you because maybe your energy was a bit off. So even though you had a really good intention, you're not going in feeling good and feeling comfortable and feeling, coming from this space, and they're not in congruence with you, they're not also feeling your intention, they might get the wrong impression. And that's because maybe, for example, you have a needy energy, and a needy energy is like a chasing energy, which makes the person want to run away. Anything that's chased wants to run away, for example. Or maybe you went in feeling not confident about the conversation. You want to have a conversation that maybe is around boundaries or, that comes from a really loving space. But because you're not confident about the conversation, it doesn't create confidence in that person. And so that's why it's around not what you said, but how you feel. And then, you know, they are picking up those signs. So the other thing I want you to understand around mirror neurons is not just that your environment is so important, but also to understand that that's often why you remain in cycles, right? Because as a child, you would have learned how to deal with situations based off of what you were picking up. So if you had, you know, a parent who was particularly anxious, or a teacher who would fly off the handle, or then you would have learnt, right? So I feel this energy of somebody who is about to lose it. How do I deal with it? So I might become really triggered myself, and when I become triggered, I become defensive. Or when I become triggered, I flee. I don't even want to be in the situation. Or when I become triggered, I will get in my fight mode, and I'll be really, really, you know, in opposition to whatever that feels like. And then what happens is we take that, so we understand, oh, I know what this looks like. I feel it. So a lot of people will talk about this in terms of, lots of people these days say, I'm an empath. Hey, newsflash, we're all empaths. Because this is mirror neurons are around what help us to understand what somebody is feeling, not just what they're saying intellectually, which is that whole people don't remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel, right? So we all have the ability to be empathetic, whether we lean into that and we understand that, and we understand it for what it is, or we don't. That's a different thing. But we're all empaths, okay, guys? Like, just get this whole thing out where we think we're superior, because I hear lots of people say, and I honestly used to be like this too, not probably in this big way, but I hear people say a lot, oh, I'm such an empath, and so I feel it more than everybody else. Well, newsflash, you probably do. Other people feel it too. We all have the ability to feel it. It's just, what do you do with it next? So you probably, from a mirror neuron perspective, might pick up an energy, and then you decide how you deal with it based off of how you used to deal with it and how you've dealt with it since you had that very first core belief and understanding about how to deal with the situation. So when I had a mother who was incredibly anxious in the past, I would feel the anxiety, and then what I do with it next is I would comfort her, or I would feel really anxious myself and not know how to deal with it. So I kind of freeze in that situation, or I feel this feeling of anxiety, and then I become quite frustrated. It leads me into frustration. And I'm like, why are you feeling so anxious? Like, how ridiculous, you know, and it makes you frustrated as a child to feel the energy of that from somebody who you feel like should know better and should be your protector. But you, and even if that mother is saying the things, but you feel the energy, you know, your mirror neurons are activated at that point in time. And so now, as an adult, you are now doing the same thing. So you are turning up, you feel somebody's anxiety, and you repeat the cycle. So now, as an adult, you become frustrated with people who feel anxious. You don't understand why. Why would you feel so anxious? It's kind of a ridiculous, redundant thing. Or you see somebody who's anxious, you become anxious. And also, it's probably a mirror neuron as well, but you become anxious also. Or somebody becomes anxious, and then you're like, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm just not going to. So this is all around the energy as well. And it just explains, you know, why. It's a really cool brain fact, right? It explains why some people live in chaos, because their system is mirrored. is wired to mirror chaos, you know, and other people who have regulated, grounded, you know, energy, and that is where they come from. And what I want to help you to understand is these are not fixed, right? And so the things that we learn, the core beliefs that we have, the things we've wired and fired when we were younger, or even generationally, right? Because we know, you know, we know through epigenetics now that generational trauma is an actual thing, that you can change it. And that's what I want to help you to understand, is that you can actually change it. And we can change it through those things like recognizing the cycle, becoming aware of, oh, I see that in every situation where somebody behaves like that, I get triggered like this and I react like that. So what must I believe to be true for me to be behaving in that way? So that's one of the, you know, one of the things that we can do. Obviously, you can get yourself around people that you want to be more liked, you know, more like, sorry, not liked, that you want to be more like, because that's how we start to get congruence. You know, that's why we get around people and we start to behave in the same way, you know. You even hear this with, you know, I have somebody in my life who has an American accent, never went to America. And then when I've said to her, why do you have an American accent? Did you grow up in America? Was that, you know? And she's like, no, I had a teacher once who had a huge impact on me and was from the United States. And for whatever reason, they've kind of gotten this, you know, assimilated and had this congruence with this teacher, and then kept that accent, probably because it felt like a safe time for her in her life. So it just shows, you know, that influence of people. I know sometimes when I get around people who have a bit of an accent or speak with a particular cadence, or, you know, I start to kind of mirror them in a way, you know. And so sometimes we're doing it consciously, and sometimes it's a good thing. Like if you've ever worked in sales, and you know that kind of mirroring, they teach that. So sometimes people are doing it consciously, but a lot of the time it's unconscious or subconscious, and we don't know that we're doing it. So, but what I want to help you to understand is get around people, things, situations, all of the things that you want to aspire to be like. You know, listen to podcasts, you know, that where you, or not just podcasts, you know, read books that help to uplift you, that help you to understand how you can become more of yourself, how you can fulfill whatever it is that you want to. And then, and if you're listening to this, then I'm guessing that's already what you're doing, which is amazing. That means you have a growth mindset, and that's a beautiful and amazing thing. And recognize your cycles, your patterns. Start to see, why do I keep getting the same relationship over and over and over? Why are all my friendships the same? Why are all my situationships the same? Why are my you know, well, why are my relationships with this particular set of people, or what is that, or with my boss, you know, with my whoever it is? So it could be a relationship cycle, it could be a money cycle. You know, a lot of times people have, and I've talked a little bit about this before as well, or a lot about, you know, the cycles that we have around money trauma, and that can be recognizing, becoming aware. So awareness, you know, a lot of people talk about being conscious. So and what I want you to understand, so when one of the other things that I do, and what I have done in the past with a lot of businesses, is we talk about unconscious bias. And a lot of people will say, oh no, I don't have any biases. Well, the reason why they're called unconscious is because they're not conscious yet, right? So we have biases, we all do, absolutely. We have things, and that's because of a whole lot of things, all the filters that we have in our lives. But I just wanted to point out to you that a lot of the time it is not conscious, which means for it not to be conscious means we just don't have an awareness of it yet. Once we become aware of what is the trigger, what is the cycle, oh, now I can do something about it. So when that unconscious, subconscious becomes conscious, when we become aware of it, that's when we can heal it, that's when we can change it, that's when we can regulate it, that's when we can ground ourselves, that's when we can lean into more of who we really are on this planet, why we're here, how we're meant to serve, how we can fulfill our personal legend, our destiny, all of those things. So I hope you found that helpful. It's always such a pleasure, to bring this to you. As always, I'm going to leave you with one thought, which is that my wish, my prayer for you is that you will heal deeply and lead boldly and live fully. And I am looking forward to seeing you next time. And I just cannot even tell you, and I really do want to say thank you to all of the people who reach out to me, through, whatever form you're doing that. And, I get so many DMs and messages and people who've had, epiphanies and awarenesses and all of those things. And I just want to say, thank you. My intention was always just whoever needs to hear this will, and whoever needs to see it will. And it could be one person, it could be 5,000 people, it wouldn't matter. But as long as I know I'm helping some people, and I always, every week and almost daily, get people who tell me that it is making a difference. And I want you to know that that makes such a difference for me, and it's such a pleasure to bring this to you. I just adore you and I appreciate you. And yeah, this is always with just the biggest amount of love. And I'll catch you next time. Mwah.